So now that we've more or less cut all of the holes that we need to, let's move on to these mechanical joints. And we're going to start with first with this, just this piston. And I'm not going to remake this. But, well, no, I'm not. But I will kind of talk about how I did this, because this one I think is fairly straightforward. The way that this was done, okay, I'm going to immediately go back on my word and remake this. Let's just delete those, get those out of the way. So the first thing I started with was the shaft for the piston. So I'm going to start with the piston shaft, so we will call it as such. Okay, this is the thing that the piston goes into, if that wasn't clear. We will rotate this 90 degrees, because I like to work on this orientation. And then we need to also adjust our inputs. So, subdivision, we'll keep it at 12. So this is going to require just a little bit of thought as far as thicknesses and all of that. The height can be arbitrary, we'll make it 4. But it's this inside diameter that I'm concerned with, because I want the piston to match it so that there's very little, what an engineer would call tolerance, right? You want them to match up, because the idea of a piston is generally on the other side of the piston is something that you don't want escaping, whether that be hydraulic fluid or air or combustion, whatever that is, oil. You don't want that getting out, so it has to be a snug fit, right? So the radius is 1, and the thickness is 0.5, which means the inside width is going to be 0.5. If I set the thickness to 0.25, then the inside thickness is going to be 1.5, right? We can test that by adding a new cylinder, rotating it accordingly, and setting the radius. If the overall width is going to be 1.5, we want the radius to be half of that, which is 0.75. It's just a little bit of math. We'll set the subdivisions to the same number so it lines up nicely. And you can see that, yes, that does in fact fit perfectly, right? It is a perfect fit for a piston. And then the rest of what I did was just detail, right? Get rid of that. Okay. So the rest was just adding edge loops so that when I smoothed it out, it stayed sharp and it, had some extra detail. All right. Much like I told some of you earlier with your robot blocking models, I extruded this out from the same piece. All right. I added a few control edge loops, added a little bit of detail there. Again, so that when I hit 3 on the number pad and smooth it out, it just looked a little bit nicer. All right, so that's the piston mechanical joint. This could be an arm extending. This could be maybe, for your robots, maybe your robot can get taller or shorter. It's got maybe, stilts built into its ankles. I don't know what the case may be, but this is how you can do a piston. Let's move on to the next one, which is these ball joints. Okay. And again, I'm going to turn on wireframe on shaded so that we can see how these work. All right, as I rotate this top, you can see that the bottom stays the same. Or, the bottom doesn't move, and you've got kind of full range of motion. You can have either it kind of just sitting on top, or in this example, it's more encapsulated so that this whatever is attached to this can't pull away from the ball part of the joint, right? So your shoulders are ball joints, okay? That's probably the most common, potentially obvious example of a ball joint, but they are found elsewhere. So how did I make these? Well, let me show you. I'm going to, we'll just hide them for now. So these started with just a cylinder, or not a cylinder, a sphere. This is a sphere. Okay. And for that first one, I just had basically a cap sitting on top. And the way that I did that is kind of like how we did the dashboard for the car last week. Okay, so I'm going to select these faces here. Okay, just the top faces. And I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Face, Duplicate. And I'm going to make sure Separate Duplicated Faces is checked. Click Duplicate. Okay, that now gives me a separate object here, which, let me turn off that. I select them both and deselect the bottom. There we go. Okay. So now what I want to do is I'm going to very, very slightly scale this out. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to select the, whoops. Okay, I'm going to hide this bottom part because it's in the way. So I'm going to go to Display, Hide, Selection. There we go. So now I just have this selected, right? So I'm going to select the faces. I'm going to very slightly scale this out. So I'm going to hit R, and we're just going to middle mouse click and drag and hold down Control and just nudge it just the tiniest bit. All right, and now what I want to do is I want to give that some thickness, right? Because nothing is just going to be one face thin. So I'm going to select all of the faces and I'm just going to extrude them. And I will set my, or just adjust my thickness, hold down Control so it's kind of subtle. And that looks about good. All right. Now, if I come here into front view, we notice that that extrusion left a little bit of an angle here on this bottom face. I personally don't want that. So I'm going to select that bottom edge, turn on point snapping, and just move it down so it snaps in line with the rest of the bottom edge. Okay, and then from there, you saw it in the example, I just extruded out this top face ring. Here's a quick little tip for selecting these face rings. If you select just the center vertex, and then Command right click, this brings up a selection menu. All right, and if I go to faces, so this is going to change my selection from this vertex to the faces, and I can either do to the contained faces or just to the faces that it's touching, which is what I want. It will select all of those instead of having to individually click 16 times. Okay, and now I can extrude the face up a little bit. Whoops, turn off snapping. Extrude it up a little bit. And then I can extrude it again. Move it up a little bit more. Okay. If I hit 3 on the number pad, you can see it gets a little bit soft, right? You know, this bottom isn't as sharp as I want it to be. If these are mechanical joints, I want it to feel like it's machined metal. So I'm going to go into, whoops, oh. I'm going to go in edge mode. I'm going to select an edge. I'm going to insert an edge loop. Let me check my settings here. That looks good. And I'm going to add an edge loop on the bottom here. And I'm going to add a couple edge loops in here. Whoops, not there. Here. Just to sharpen up that bottom edge. And I'll add one more here because that's going to need to be sharpened too. Okay. Now I hit 3, jump out into object mode, and you can see that that is nice and sharp. Now if I go to display and show all, the sphere pops back in. Put 3 on that too. Okay, and now we've got our ball joint. Now you can see that there needs to be an edge loop here, and we need to get rid of the triangles on the top there. But you can see the ball joint is there. Now, important point about this ball joint as far as animation is concerned, or, you know, posing, is that as I select this and rotate it, whoops, object mode, and rotate it, the pivot point of the kind of the cap of the ball joint is in the same location. It's in the center of the sphere, all right, so that it rotates right around it no matter how I move it. If it was in a different position, you know, if I move that pivot point, say up here, and tried to rotate it, well, now it's going to go through the sphere. That's wrong. I don't want that. It's not how that works. Okay, so you want to keep that pivot point in the same center as the sphere. Okay, now to do the other ball joint, whoops, It was just the same way as the first one. I just selected a few more faces. That's all. It's the only difference there. Just wanted to show that variety. In minutes, my goal is to express to you how to model this here hinge, ignoring these green faces. Okay. So this hinge is 3 parts. The easiest part here is just a cylinder that matches the diameter of that hole. And I just extruded the cap to make it round and pretty, right? But we don't need to worry about that. The other parts here kind of got complicated, but not too bad. So I'm going to walk you through this. Well, actually, so here's the thing. We've got 12 minutes left of class. I can model this in 12 minutes. I can't model it and explain it to you with the normal detail that I normally, do for the rest of this in 12 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to model this, and I will narrate along. I'm going to rely on you to watch this video and pause it as necessary when you need to follow along and repeat this. Deal? Deal. Here we go. So this is what I'm going for. I'm going to turn that off, and I know I want the hinge to be kind of 3 teeth on one side and 2 teeth on the other side. I'm going to start with this pipe. I'm going to orient it appropriately. I'm going to size it appropriately. I'm going to leave it at the default thickness because I know that this thickness right here is 0.5, which is a good number. I'm going to set the height to 10. I'm going to set my subdivisions around the axis to 8. Yeah, 8 works. Subdivision height, we will set the 10 because that's going to give me 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2, which is what I want. Good. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to separate this into 2 separate pieces. And this takes a little bit of kind of forethought in thinking this through before you really get into the modeling of it. So bear with me. I hope this will make sense eventually. But I'm going to select these loops. Okay, so now you can kind of see the distinction between the 2 parts of the hinge. So I've got these faces selected. I'm going to go to my edit mesh and duplicate, or not, excuse me, I do not want to duplicate these. I just want to extract them. So extract will do the same thing as duplicate without the duplication part of it. So it will take those faces and it will separate them into their own object. Okay, so now if I go to object mode, I've got, let me jump over here. Okay, I've got this object, and then I've got actually 4 other objects. So if I select this first object, which is going to be hinge, I can't spell, hinge big. Okay, I'm going to just display hide that selection. Okay, this leaves me with 4 separate objects here, which I actually want to be one object, so I'm going to select them all and combine them. This is going to be hinge small. Okay, so now what I need to do is go into edge mode, and I need to bridge these. No, not like that. This isn't going to be smooth because why would it be smooth? Bridge. Okay, now I can, whoops, select this whole edge. There we go. Deselecting these sides and bridge those. Okay, now that those are bridged, this should make that bridge smoothly. No, of course it doesn't. So we will just do that, and G. Remember, G is to repeat the last action that you took. So that's just what I'm going to do, is a bunch of, oops, select the whole thing, deselect the sides, and bridge. And bridge. Okay, good. Now what I want to do is kind of establish that whole, kind of the rest of the flange of the hinge, I guess would be the right term, maybe? Something like that. Anyway, I'm going to select these faces here. Whoops, I have an extra thing selected. I don't want that. Always good to make sure that you don't have extra crap selected because it will get in the way, confuse you, and make things weird. So, okay, that looks good. So now we're going to extrude, and I'm going to just immediately move it a little bit. Okay, this is basically like adding an edge loop because I know I'm going to need that, and it's just kind of cutting corners there. Okay, so I've got that. The next thing that I need to do is I want to make these one piece. So I'm going to delete these inside faces here, and actually I want to delete this little face here too. Delete. And these, and delete. Okay, now I've got this edge loop and this edge loop that I can bridge together. Everything looks lovely and nice there. Okay, now what I did before, also to make these nice, is I selected all of these and I just scaled these to 0. I can kind of move them. Oops. Also, I realized that 0 will scale them to absolute 0. So if I type in 2, it moves out to 2 on the axis, on the grid floor, which is kind of nice. And just for my own pendantry, I'll set that to 4. 3. And no, it doesn't. It literally makes 0 difference, but I did it anyway. Okay, so that is that half. The rest of the things that I did to this was just to make it prettier when I hit 3 on the number pad to smooth it out, right? So I will go through that really quickly. And I'm going to do some things in kind of groups to keep things nice and even. But here's how I did that. So I'm going to do edge mode, shift right click, insert edge loop. I'm going to set multiple edge loops to 1 so that it adds it exactly in the center. And I need to do the inside of these as well. Don't forget about the inside. Okay. Now I'm going to select all of these left edges and move them left. All right. Okay, this is the advantage of working symmetrically and evenly, is as you think through this, you can make nice even things very quickly. The next thing is, as we smooth this, we can see that there's still a couple more places we need to add some edge loops. So if I go back to my insert edge loop tool, okay, this is the most used tool that stays here on the left side, or not most used, most recently used. We'll do equal distance from edge, and we can add one in, actually, multiple edge loops, 2, 2, and then we will just scale them apart to keep them evenly spaced. Okay, the last places that we need to add these are around the side faces here. So again, we will do multiple edge loops on both sides. And then I'm going to select the outermost rings, and I'm going to scale them up just in this direction. I don't want to scale them overall because then it's going to scale them out too, and that's weird and wrong, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to constrain it to that plane. And the same thing for these little ones, only this time I'll just scale them down. Okay, so now when I hit 3 on the number pad, go to object mode. Ooh, we're getting some weirdness. What's going on there? I don't know what that is. Why is that happening? Why is that happening? I don't know. What's going on there? I've got 4 minutes. I don't know if I'm going to get all this. Let's just go to conform. I don't know why that's doing that, because I don't actually see anything wrong here. Especially if I, for instance, render this. Well, it doesn't render when I go in there because I don't have a nicer render engine installed. Whatever, it's fine. I'm going to now show all. We can hide this one. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side, right? So same thing that we just did. I'm going to select those edges and bridge them. Of course, it's not going to bridge correctly on the first try. So I'll do the first one, double click, and bridge. Whoops. Double click, deselect. Come on. Deselect. I'm selecting all the wrong things here. So go through and do the same thing here. Oops. I don't know why it doesn't want to do this first try. Probably just because I'm in a hurry. Okay, a lot of repetition here, but I think that should also serve to let you know that it is, the same handful of tools. It's just kind of how you use them and thinking through the actual process of making this. And I also just forgot which way was which. So this is interesting. Let's quickly show. Okay, good. So that's on that side. I think I can do no, I do need to hide that again. Display, hide that. All right, so I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to extrude these 4. We'll just move them back this way. I won't add that extra extrusion in there. I don't really need it. It was just for a little bit more sharpness and detail. We can delete those and then bridge those. Oops. Bridge those. Okay. So now we got both halves. We know that this inside diameter is 0.5, so now we add a cylinder that's 0.5 right in the center there, and we'll have our final hinges. Okay, so I can go on a quick insert edge loop spree here to get all the edges that we need. Just to keep things sharp. Again, this is a slightly less exact way than I did it on the other side, but we'll get similar results, considering that we are quickly running out of time. Whoa, not there. Okay. There, and I think that's the last one. We'll probably need one there. Okay. That should be good. We smooth it out. That looks lovely. Well, that doesn't look lovely right there, but everything else looks great. So, display, show all. We'll smooth that one out too. Okay, so now we have this really nice hinge section. Nice, even, smooth, good, clean corners. And that is how I made this. Okay, I just spent a little bit more time on the details, but that's how it works. So there's 3 mechanical joints. For those of you in this class, please use these on your robots and all of the various points. There are more mechanical joints than these 3 that exist, so you can find reference images, and I encourage you to try to do things that I didn't just explicitly show you, but you definitely have these 3 tools at your disposal as well.